One introduction ROSEP view the United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only. For home building and furniture building, for just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree, but it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lungs, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom, the Eco-Design Wood Stove, and International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. ROSEP view purple air PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.
Hi, my name is Lily. Andrew gave you the intro to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates and their concern for air pollution from indoor residential wood burning. Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, or ROSEP, would like every near neighbor of an indoor residential wood burner whose wood smoke enters their yards and sickens the near neighbors to have a purple air PM 2.5 monitor hanging from the eaves of their home to measure the level of PM 2.5 entering their yards. That measurement of air pollution should be used as evidence of unnecessary air pollution, and each indoor residential wood burner should be shut down based on that evidence, one indoor residential wood burner at a time if necessary. The presentation by Andrew ended at 2 minutes 5 seconds. The same presentation by Emma starts at 2 minutes 3 seconds before the end of this podcast. So I am Lily, your timekeeper, and you can start the next podcast at 2 minutes 5 seconds in if you would not like to see the presentation by Andrew a second time. This presentation by me, Lily, ends at 5 minutes in. What you will see in the main content of this ROSEP podcast will be news about air pollution from indoor residential wood burning and how that air pollution is being combated by ordinary people just like you who are unfortunately near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners at this time. There will also be news about unnecessary and highly polluting use of wood as fuel in industrial wood burners and preventable air pollution from wood burning wildfires. There will also be news about air pollution from PM 2.5 from gas-powered cars. There will also be news about airborne diseases which are also preventable with vaccines such as COVID-19 and measles and whooping cough, to name just a few. In 2025, Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates is also concerned with combating the Trump destruction of government funding for programs which protect human health through the Department of Health and Human Services, and Trump destruction of programs which fund the science and medical research plan to protect human health from preventable illnesses. Protecting human health is a patriotic act, and our defense against enemies is weakened if we are not as healthy as we can be. Heat pump rebates are now offered by the federal government, distributed through the eligible United States, are available in 2025 and are the best, cleanest, and now cheapest alternative to indoor residential wood burning if that burning is actually done to purportedly save money. Wind and solar as sources of the electricity that powers heat pumps and electric cars is also cheaper than burning, with the adverse health effects that are caused by indoor residential wood burning also come at a cost to near neighbors, both in shortening and ending their lives and in actual hospital, clinic, and funeral costs. Instead of being compensated monetarily, near neighbors should instead be able to achieve immediate relief by stopping indoor residential wood burning in their hyper-localized neighborhoods, which relief readings from purple air PM 2.5 monitors used as evidence of air pollution will help them achieve. Welcome to news about hopeful scientific and medical achievements that will also help us achieve the goal of clean air to breathe.
Episode 57 DHWA June 2, 2025 Operation Spiderweb Ukraine Destruction of Russian Aircraft. In Episode 57 DHWA 1 University of Wisconsin UW biochemists engineered a poplar tree that produces a high-demand industrial chemical. 2 University of Wisconsin Madison research funding alerts. 3 The National Science Foundation NSF grant cuts fall heaviest on scientists from underrepresented groups. 4 The MAHA report of RFK Jr. full of errors and Trump holds few briefings from staff. 5 The MAHA hallucinations of RFK Jr. 6 COVID summer and confusion and measles. 7 California Democrats Party activists in California are not sold on a Harris run for governor. 8 Poland The Poland presidential election result highlights Trump-Europe divide. 9 Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski is not using nice words about life under Trump. 10 A fiery brief fueled by conservatives helped put the Trump tariffs in peril. 11 I did not get it done. A reflective Tim Walz wants to make good. 12 The Trump proposed budget would cut the ecosystem's mission area and much of its work. 13 How the little-known dark roof lobby may be making U.S. cities hotter. 14 A war on children as U.S. changes COVID vaccine rules. Parents of trial volunteers push back. 15 Operation Spiderweb a visual guide to the Ukraine destruction of Russian aircraft. 16 Empathy is a kind of strength. Former New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern on kind leadership, public rage and life in Trump America. 17 He is the strongman who inspired Trump but is Viktor Orbán losing his grip on power. 18 Want to see where the Trump tariffs are leading U.S. business? Look at Georgia main content. 1 University of Wisconsin UW biochemists engineered a poplar tree that produces a high-demand industrial chemical. It was a surprise discovery only made possible by sustained investment in research. Excerpts edited by Rossep for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization, the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences Gals Connection at UW-Madison. Email newsletter May 15, 2025 UW-Madison biochemist Professor Brian Fox helped to develop a genetic alteration in poplar trees so they can produce an industrial chemical commonly used as a preservative and in synthetic fibers. Research at the University of Wisconsin-Madison drives innovation, saves lives, creates jobs, supports small businesses and fuels the industries that keep America competitive and secure. What is the benefit for taxpayers for funding your work? One would be an easier, more efficient way to produce this especially useful chemical. Another is that we take this as a base of knowledge and find more new tricks to teach plants. There are drugs, antioxidants, cosmetics, food preservatives, all kinds of things closely related to the molecules we are making, and we are also training our children to have the skills to continue this work for more benefit. How are you training future scientists? We have the Biotechnology Training Program, an NIH-funded program which was created by an act of Congress about 35 years ago. We train PhD-level scientists to have experience in both biological and physical sciences, microbiologists who can talk to chemical engineers, and engineers who can work with cancer biologists to build devices to help cancer patients. We have trained over 300 students through this program. They have become successful as leaders in industry, as entrepreneurs who start companies, as workers for the federal government and national labs, or as successful academics. They are the talented people who keep this American success going, creating intellectual property across the entire technical and scientific and industrial spectrum. 2 University of Wisconsin-Madison research funding alerts. Excerpts edited by Rossep for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization funding alerts. UW-Madison email for June 1, 2025 to a priority research program and equipment on emerging infectious diseases. Bebermia call for projects. Agents Nacional de Recherche sur la Sida, National Agency for AIDS Research, Emerging Infectious Diseases, Institut National de la Santé et de la Recherche Médicale, INSERM, French Institute of Health and Medical Research. June 30, 2025 confirms. You record this track will aim to strengthen prevention, preparedness and response capacities in the face of future health crises, focusing on the priority emerging infectious diseases identified in the 2024 call: respiratory viruses, viral hemorrhagic fevers and arboviruses. The expected projects should adopt an interdisciplinary approach and contribute to advancing research in the Service of Public Health to BioPAG JGH Foundation Clinician Scientist Training Fellowship Asian Pacific Association of Gastroenterology OPAG June 30, 2025 confirmed $40,000. This fellowship sponsored by the Asian Pacific Association of Gastroenterology OPAG and supported by the JGH Foundation is to assist a medical graduate who wishes to obtain training as a clinician scientist in the broad field of gastroenterology and hepatology to see new post-COVID conditions, potential diagnosis, testing, management and ongoing research. Pfizer Incorporated July 10, 2025 confirmed $150,000 through this RFP. It is our intent to support educational programs on post-COVID conditions, also known as long COVID or past. These programs should aim to equip primary care providers and infectious disease specialists with the necessary knowledge and skills to identify, diagnose and manage COVID. 3. The National Science Foundation NSF grant cuts fall heaviest on scientists from underrepresented groups. Projects to broaden participation were cut disproportionately and were often led by Black scientists, women and those with disabilities. Excerpts edited by RASEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. UW Madison College of Agricultural and Life Sciences email newsletter May 16, 2025. Chicago State University students Xavier McGowan and Mehdi Nadoud often participate in a chemistry lab activity. These students at Chicago State University are part of a program to broaden participation in science that the National Science Foundation has terminated. William with Chicago State. A version of this story appeared in Science Volume 388, Issue 6749. More than half of the 1,500 research grants that the National Science Foundation NSF has terminated in the past month under orders from President the Trump administration aim to bring groups historically underrepresented in science into the mainstream. Ending those grants reversed decades of efforts focused on what the agency calls the missing millions: women, racial and ethnic minorities, veterans and low-income and rural students. For the MAHA report of RFK Jr. full of errors and Trump holds few briefings from staff. Excerpts edited by RASEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Substack letters from an American. Heather Cox Richardson June 2, 2025. The report of the Make America Healthy Again Commission released on May 23, 2025 is full of errors, including misrepresentation of experiments and non-existent studies. After news spoke of the errors in the report, the White House press secretary called the problems formatting issues, but AI experts said that it appears the authors of the report relied heavily on AI. The executive director of the American Public Health Association said this is not an evidence-based report and for all practical purposes it should be junked. At this point it cannot be used for any policy making. It cannot even be used for any serious discussion because you cannot believe what is in it. Trump also appears to be having trouble with the demands of governance. 5. The MAHA Hallucinations of RFK Jr. Excerpts edited by RASEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Bulwark June 2, 2025. As political alliances break down, embarrassing leaks to the press start to speed up. So as Elon Musk exits the government, badmouthing Republican budget efforts on his way out the door, it is little surprise the New York Times is suddenly getting the gory details. 6. COVID Summer and Confusion and Measles. Excerpts edited by RASEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to Residents Against Wood Smoke Emission Particulates, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Your local epidemiologist email newsletter June 2, 2025. This week in health. COVID-19, a summer wave brewing amid a ton of confusion. A lot is happening in the COVID-19 world. Here are 4 updates for you. 1. Transmission and a summer wave. COVID-19 levels in the US remain low, but if history is any guide, that may not last. We have seen waves every summer and cases are rising in parts of the Western Pacific, Southeast Asia and Eastern Mediterranean. Waves are started by a number of complex factors including new variants. Last week the WHO added a new strain NB.1.8.1 to its variant monitoring watch list. This variant is another descendant of Omicron. So far it has a growth advantage of approximately 65% compared to the Omicron 500% advantage, which means it would cause a wave but not a tsunami. This may be the one that helps jumpstart a summer wave, but while this variant has been detected in the US, it is still at low levels. Time will tell. To the COVID vaccine formula for this fall. Last week the FDA Vaccine Advisory Committee VAPAC recommended not updating the COVID-19 vaccine strain for this fall. That means the same formula from last year will be used again. This aligns with the WHO recommendation, though the virus is still mutating. Experts concluded the changes are not big enough to warrant a new formula yet. This is the first time we are not updating the vaccine for fall 3. Eligibility for COVID-19 vaccines is a confusing mess from the political ping-pong match. At first the political appointee to FDA said one thing in an opinion piece on MAHA, and RFK Jr. said another on X. Then the CDC overrode or negotiated. It is unclear what the policy should be. By publishing the vaccine schedule, as of now 65 plus are eligible, under 65 with certain health conditions are eligible, although this is very unclear right now and largely depends on how FDA changes the licenses. But, and this is important, recommendations are self-attestation at pharmacies. This means pharmacists are not permitted to ask for proof of underlying conditions. Everyone else, including kids and pregnant women, may get the vaccine if they and their clinician agree it is appropriate, called shared clinical decision making. This was a really important change that the CDC overrode RFK Jr. on. While there is a legitimate debate around annual boosters, there is clear evidence of the importance of a primary vaccine series for kids and for immunity passed to babies from pregnant mothers. Note: insurance may not cover your vaccine under this category. Unfortunately, some payers have a long history of not covering shared clinical decision making, so I would expect variability in coverage later this month. The official meeting of external expert advisors (ASIP) should clarify things when they meet as scheduled, but this is not guaranteed. RFK Jr. could cancel or delay their ability to do this at any moment. Out of all of this, my biggest concern remains the damage is already done. A wave of confusion due to unilateral political decision making instead of established evidence-based processes, resulting in whiplash headlines likely hurts trust, sows immense confusion, and in turn reduces vaccine uptake. For some good news, FDA approved the Moderna next-gen COVID-19 vaccine with 3 improvements: sharper immune response instead of the whole spike protein. This vaccine only includes the pieces of the spike protein that change quickly and are the key targets for antibodies, the RBD and NTD. This workaround gets rid of the conserved parts so that the immune system has to pay attention to the parts of spike that change. In clinical trials, the updated vaccine gave better antibody responses and had higher effectiveness than Spikevax, particularly in older adults. Smaller dose, more supply. The dose needed is much lower, 10 versus 50 micrograms, so we can vaccinate more people with the same amount of vaccine liquid in a vial. Note the side effect profile for those who react badly to this vaccine, e.g. a fever for a few days, does not change. Easier storage. It can be stored in standard refrigerators, not ultra-cold freezers, making it far more accessible in clinics and pharmacies. It is unclear when this vaccine will become available because the CDC still needs to approve it. Quick measles update: as of Friday, there are 1,132 confirmed measles cases in the US compared to 1856 in Mexico and 2,791 in Canada. West Texas remains the main hotspot, though growth has slowed. Small but growing outbreaks have also been reported in Montana, North Dakota, and Colorado, all currently under 50 cases. Check with local health departments for exposure info. Last week, CDC updated its travel warning, cautioning that travelers can catch measles in many travel settings, including travel hubs such as airports and train stations, public transportation like airplanes and trains, tourist attractions, and large crowded events. If you are fully vaccinated, you are well protected. Headlines: The New York Times, June 2, 2025. 7 California Democrats party activists in California are not sold on the Harris run for governor. The New York Times excerpts edited by Walz said for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization, Kamala Harris did not appear in person at a California State Democratic Convention, leaving delegates to wonder how seriously she is considering running and whether it would be wise. Poland elects Karol Nawrocki as president. The New York Times: Poland, who is the nationalist Karol Nawrocki the next president of Poland? The New York Times 8 Poland. The Poland presidential election result highlights Trump-Europe divide. The New York Times accepted by ROSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization tugged between two poles of Western power. The Washington of President Trump and Brussels as a champion of liberal democracy. Poland tilted toward the Trumpian model on Monday when the nationalist historian eked out a narrow win in the presidential election. Karol Nawrocki, an ally of the Poland populist former governing party Law and Justice, defeated the liberal mayor of Warsaw Rafał Trzaskowski in the runoff held on Sunday after a polarized campaign. Trzaskowski has been supported by the centrist in Brussels steeped Prime Minister Tusk of Poland. Nawrocki by the Trump administration. The result announced Monday will have little immediate impact on the domestic or foreign policies of Poland, which the president does not control. The country will continue supporting Ukraine militarily, a policy both sides agree on. Nor will the change result in a move to leave the European Union. Trump budget cuts. Fact check. Trump and GOP false claims on the Medicaid cuts and deficit hikes of the bill. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts. Trump tariffs. 9 Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski is not using nice words about life under Trump. The New York Times accepted by ROSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 non-profit organization. Senator Lisa Murkowski has been frank about the dilemma faced by Republicans like her who are dismayed about President Trump policies and pronouncements but worried that speaking out could bring death threats or worse. Trump budget cuts. Opinion. Cultural decline in the U.S. is a threat to democracy. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts. Opinion. Save us senators from a very expensive mistake. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts. Opinion. Why politics feels so cruel right now. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts. Rising mortgage rates and recession fears stall a fragile housing market. The New York Times. Trump tariffs. In a fiery brief fueled by conservatives helped put the Trump tariffs in peril. The New York Times. Accepted by ROSEP for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. A powerful sign that President Trump tariff-driven trade war is at risk came in a friend of the court brief filed in April by a coalition that included many prominent conservative and libertarian lawyers, scholars and former officials. The brief was also a signal of a deepening rift between Trump and the conservative legal movement, one that burst into public view last week with the Trump attacks on the Federalist Society, whose leaders helped pick the judges and justices he nominated in his first term. Among the people who signed the brief in the tariffs case was Richard Epstein, who teaches at New York University and is an influential libertarian legal scholar. You have to understand that the conservative movement is now as an intellectual movement consistently anti-Trump on most issues, he said. Trump tariffs. Trump live updates. President shows no sign of retreat on tariffs. The New York Times. Ukraine war in Russia. Airfield attacks. Ukraine aims for strategic and symbolic blow. The New York Times. Ukraine war. Ukraine and Russia met for second round of talks as attacks escalate. The New York Times. Ukraine war. What to know about the Russia-Ukraine ceasefire talks. The New York Times. United Kingdom. UK faces most serious military threat since Cold War. Starmer says. The New York Times. Headlines. The New York Times. June 1, 2025. Air pollution from wood burning. What to know about Canadian wildfires in Manitoba and Saskatchewan. The New York Times. Germany and air pollution from wood burning. Hamburg hospital fire kills 3 and injures more than 50. The New York Times. Medicine and Science. Breast cancer patients get early warning of faltering drugs with blood tests. The New York Times. Medicine and Science. Exercise extends life for people with cancer. Study shows. The New York Times. Medicine and Science. He was bleeding internally, then doctors found the real danger. The New York Times. Medicine and Science. Tick bites are no joke. Here is how to prevent them and protect yourself. Reviews by Wirecutter. Michigan Democrats 11. I did not get it done. A reflective Tim Walz wants to make good. The New York Times. Accepted by ROSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. Nearly 7 months since his ticket lost the 2024 presidential election. Tim Walz is trying all at once to make amends for everything he thinks went wrong. He is going to Republican areas where Democrats lost ground. He is sitting for countless interviews after the campaign of former Vice President Kamala Harris limited his media exposure, and as his party engages in collective finger-pointing, he is among the few Democrats admitting that they themselves made mistakes. I know my job and I did not get it done, Walz, the governor of Minnesota, said last week on a podcast hosted by former Senator Jon Tester. The Montana Democrat. The Tim Walz Atonement and Explanation Tour had its biggest audiences to date on Saturday when he delivered speeches to Democratic Party conventions in South Carolina and California. Poland. What to know about the Poland presidential runoff election and the Trump involvement. The New York Times. Technology and Resources. North Carolina town has some of the purest quartz that powers the tech of the world. The New York Times. Trump budget cuts 12. The Trump proposed budget would cut the ecosystems mission area and much of its work. The New York Times. Accepted by ROSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. The Trump proposed budget for 2026 slashes about 90% of the funding for one of the American cornerstone biological and ecological research programs known as the Ecosystems Mission Area. The program is part of the U.S. Geological Survey and studies nearly every aspect of the ecology and biology of natural and human-altered landscapes and waters around the country. The 2026 proposed budget allocates $29 million for the project to cut from its current funding level of $293 million. The budget proposal also reduces funds for other programs in the U.S. Geological Survey as well as other federal science agencies. The budget still needs to be approved by Congress, and scientists are seizing the opportunity to save the EMA. In early May, more than 70 scientific societies and universities signed a letter to Interior Secretary Doug Burgum urging him not to eliminate the program. Trump tariffs opinion. Taco is the secret to the Trump resilience. The New York Times. Trump tariffs opinion. How William F. Buckley Jr. wrote the Trump playbook. The New York Times. Trump tariffs in Europe. The U.S. right loathes the EU. How are they going to negotiate trade? The New York Times. Ukraine war. Train derails in western Russia after bridge collapse, killing at least 7. The New York Times. Ukraine war. Ukraine drone strike targets Russian air bases in large-scale attack. The New York Times. Ukraine war. Ukraine says Russian strike on military base killed 12 soldiers. The New York Times. Headlines. The Guardian. June 2, 2025. Air pollution from wood burning. Thousands evacuated in 3 Canadian provinces as wildfires continue. Wildfires. The Guardian. Climate change. 13. How the little-known dark roof lobby may be making U.S. cities hotter. Climate crisis. The Guardian. Accepted by ROSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. It began with a pitch from the lobbyist. The Tennessee representative Rusty Grills says the lobbyist proposed a simple idea: repeal the requirement of Tennessee for reflective roofs on many commercial buildings. In late March, Grills and his fellow lawmakers voted to eliminate the rule, scrapping a measure meant to save energy, lower temperatures and protect Tennesseans from extreme heat. Grills, a Republican, told Floodlight that he introduced the bill to give consumers more choice. It was another win for a well-organized lobbying campaign led by manufacturers of dark roofing materials. Industry representatives called the rollback in Tennessee a needed correction as more of the state moved into a hotter climate zone, expanding the reach of the Tennessee cool roof rule. Critics called it dangerous and deceptive. The new law will lead to higher energy costs and greater heat-related illnesses and deaths. State Representative Harold Love and the Reverend John Robinson said in a statement it will, critics warn, make Nashville, Memphis and other cities hotter, particularly in underserved Black and Latino communities where many struggle to pay their utility bills. Similar lobbying has played out in Denver and Baltimore and at the national level. Medicine and Science. 14. A war on children as U.S. changes COVID vaccine rules. Parents of trial volunteers push back Trump administration. The Guardian. Accepted by ROSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization as the Trump administration contemplates new clinical trials for COVID boosters and moves to restrict COVID vaccines for children and others. Parents whose children participated in the clinical trials expressed anger and dismay. It is really devastating to see this evidence base officially ignored and discarded, said Sophia Bessie, as a parent in North Carolina whose 2- and 4-year-old kids were part of the Pfizer pediatric vaccine trial. It is infuriating. My kids contributed literal blood and tears to help demonstrate the safety of these vaccines. Poland. Orbán and Le Pen share the car Peril Nawrocki election as Polish president. The Guardian. Trump budget cuts. Key U.S. weather monitoring offices understaffed as hurricane season starts. Trump administration. The Guardian. Trump budget cuts parks, libraries, museums. Here's why Trump is attacking the best-loved institutions in America. Margaret Sullivan. The Guardian. Trump budget cuts. The Trump tax bill helps the rich, hurts the poor, and adds trillions to the deficit. Katrina Vanden Heuvel. The Guardian. Ukraine War 15. Operation Spiderweb. A visual guide to the Ukraine destruction of Russian aircraft. The Guardian. Excerpts edited by Rossep for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 non-profit organization. A Ukrainian drone attack has destroyed billions of dollars worth of Russian aircraft stationed at bases across the country, including at locations as far away as Siberia, and what Kyiv claims is its longest-range assault of the war. The spectacular operation known as Spiderweb was prepared in secret over 18 months. The Ukraine agents moved short-range drones and explosives inside Russia before they were launched remotely for a coordinated strike on Sunday that was intended to strike at the Moscow air superiority. Ukraine war. Ukraine proposes next round of talks before end of June as Russia rejects unconditional ceasefire. Russia-Ukraine war. Live Ukraine war. Ukraine war briefing. Senior Ukrainian commander resigns after deadly Russian strike. Ukraine. The Guardian. Headlines. The Guardian. June 1, 2025. New Zealand and the United States, where former New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern now lives Trump budget cuts. 16. Empathy is a kind of strength. Former New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern on kind leadership, public rage in life in Trump America. The Guardian. Excerpts edited by Rossep for brevity and clarity in relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 non-profit organization. In 2022, a few months before she quit as Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern was standing at the sink in the toilets in Auckland Airport washing her hands when a woman came up to her and leaned in. She was so close that Ardern could feel the heat from her skin. I just wanted to say thank you, the woman said. Thanks for ruining the country. She turned and left, leaving Ardern standing there as if I were a high schooler who had just been raised. The incident was deeply shocking. Ardern had been re-elected in a historic landslide 2 years before she enjoyed conversation and debate. She liked being the kind of leader who was not sealed off from the rest of the population, but this, says Ardern, felt like something new. It was the tenor of the voice of the woman, the way she had stood so close, the way her seething non-specific rage felt not only unpredictable but incongruous to the situation. What was happening? The incident came at a pivotal moment. Ardern sensed that the tide was turning against her and she was grappling with whether to go. Something had been loosened worldwide, she says, with rage everywhere, public servants being followed and attacked as if they were somehow distinct from being human. We all recognize this rage, but Ardern was at the center of it, representing progressive politics, tough COVID measures, empathy, emotion, anti-racism, femaleness, a symbol of a different time, more rational, kinder, when rules still meant something, when there were many female leaders, Angela Merkel, Theresa May, Sonja Marin, Mia Motley, Meta Frederickson, sighing when. For all these reasons, Ardern is now missed by progressives at home and abroad. Trump budget cuts going to increase prices on everybody. U.S. Energy Department workers sound alarm over cuts. Trump administration. The Guardian. Trump budget cuts in a real sense. U.S. democracy has died. How Trump is emulating Orbán of Hungary. Trump. The Guardian. Trump budget cuts, drugs, marital advice, and that black eye. Key takeaways from the Trump Oval Office send-off for Elon Musk. Trump. The Guardian. Trump budget cuts in Hungary. 17. He is the strongman who inspired Trump, but is Viktor Orbán losing his grip on power? The Guardian. Excerpts edited by Rossep for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 non-profit organization. Since Trump began his second term in January, the adoration has seemingly turned to emulation at a frenzied pace. Trump, like Orbán before him, has seized on state powers to pursue rivals, embrace dark rhetoric to demonize political opponents, and purge wokeness from institutions in what analysts described as the Orbanization of America for rights groups, journalists and activists in Hungary who have long pushed back against the steady erosion of rights by arguably the most successful populist leader in the modern world. The parallels are eerie. Over the past 15 years they have challenged a playbook that has now gone global, turning them into a singular source on how Americans and others around the world can fight back in the face of Democratic backsliding. Trump budget cuts, loan plan and Republican bill could worsen doctor shortage, experts warn. U.S. healthcare. The Guardian. Ukraine war. Russia says blasts led to deadly train crashes in regions bordering Ukraine. Russia. The Guardian. Trump tariffs. Trump claimed tariffs are easy. He is learning the hard hard way that is not the case. The Guardian. Trump tariffs. Trump does not know how to deal with China. His cowardice only makes a war with Taiwan more likely. Scientist. All. The Guardian. Trump tariffs and Georgia 18 want to see where the Trump tariffs are leading U.S. business. Look at Georgia. The Guardian. Excerpts edited by ROSEP for brevity and clarity and relationship to residents against wood smoke emission particulates. A 501c3 nonprofit organization. If you want a bellwether to measure the broad impact of Trump tariffs on the economy, look south to Georgia. The political swing state has a $900 billion economy, somewhere between the GDPs of Taiwan and Switzerland. The hospitality industry is facing an existential crisis. Wine merchants wonder aloud if they will survive the year, but others, like those in industrial manufacturing, will carefully argue that well-positioned businesses will profit. Some say they are insulated from international competition by the nature of their industry. Others, like the movie industry, are simply confused by the proposals that have been raised and are looking for entirely different answers. So far it is a mixed bag. In a state, Trump won by 2 points, and with yet another pivotal U.S. Senate race in a year, Republican margins are thinner than those of the retailers with their business on the line.
Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. Saying the quiet part out loud. Roar. Hi, I am Tiger. Our human asked us to get up from our naps and start Cat's corner strategy with Tiger and Leone. She gave us a list of internet allies, which we will post for her here.
Hi, I am Leone. It is better for your mental fitness to go to these websites than to go to bro sites for advice. Substack letters from an American Heather Cox Richardson. Substack your local epidemiologist. The Midas Touch. The Guardian. The New York Times.
One introduction. ROSEP view. The United States government was on track in the Biden administration to reduce the prices for both clean energy heat pumps and clean energy electric cars. Trump tariffs are expected to upset those plans to prevent future air pollution and prevent climate change. The United States government should, instead of certifying wood stoves as safe when they are not safe, go forward with regulations that ban wood stove use and direct government money for use of forest refuse only for home building and furniture building. For just a few examples of use of forest products for non-burning uses, it is well known from scientific and medical research that wood burning is a substantial source of PM 2.5 emissions, yet the wood burning industry uses the scientifically debunked theory named carbon neutrality of wood burning to argue that wood burning replacing coal burning in industry, and in a trickle-down argument that wood burning should continue for home heating should continue. Presumably because it is called renewable, wood may be renewable in the sense that a tree can be planted in the place of a cut-down burned tree. But it takes centuries or decades for the newly planted tree to attain the stature of the cut-down burned tree. During those centuries or decades, photosynthesis, which converts CO2 to oxygen, and so sequesters some carbon, will not take place at the same rate as photosynthesis was performed previously, and wood burning emits both CO2 and PM 2.5, and PM 2.5 is not absorbed by trees, so PM 2.5 is not diminished by planting a tree in the place of a cut-down and burned tree. In fact, a living tree closes its pores against the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning, just as humans hold their breath in the presence of PM 2.5 from nearby wood burning. And when a tree closes its pores, the level of photosynthesis that absorbs CO2 pollution goes down. Wood burning emits 90% PM 2.5 particulate matter of 2.5 micrometer size, the perfect size to infiltrate the human lung, setting off a cascade of human health problems and early deaths. Contrary to many beliefs, wood burning emits 2.8 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel coal burning, and wood burning emits 450 times the PM 2.5 as the fossil fuel natural gas burning. Replacing coal burning with wood burning creates more air pollution in the form of CO2 and PM 2.5 than coal burning. This emission data comes from testing the cleanest burning wood stove in the United Kingdom. The Eco-Design Wood Stove International Convention does not count the emissions from wood burning. The emissions from wood burning are erased from all countries around the world when calculating if each country has met its climate goals. This non-counting or erasure of wood burning emissions data from climate goals does not mean wood burning emissions do not exist. ROSEP view. Purple air. PM 2.5 monitors hanging from the eaves of the house of a near neighbor should be used to measure the level of PM 2.5 in the air hyperlocally in the yards of near neighbors of indoor residential wood burners. If PM 2.5 levels exceed World Health Organization standards of 5 micrograms per cubic meter annually, then that evidence of air pollution from wood burning should lead to the shutdown of that indoor residential wood burning appliance, one appliance at a time if necessary.